Okay guys, so I wanted to make this video on how to debug issues faster, just as a general guide, and I think this will speed up our workflow by a lot since in most cases debugging is the thing that takes up the most amount of time and it's not the most fun activity. So I just wanted to go over step by step how to debug faster. So let's go over a real example, and then I'll just give some high level tips and the steps of how to more effectively debug issues. So right now, as a whole, it is possible to use the Claude agents like Claude Code and Codex to debug stuff. So that's the first thing, which is just to utilize all of the AI tools. So basically, at a high level, what I found to be really effective is if you give a bunch of context to the agents. So if you give it all of the log files, if you give it database access, if you give it code access, as much information as possible to give it all the context it needs to debug it. So this goes without saying that the information that you give it, so these are the read APIs, right? So you give it all of the read APIs, and then you just tell it to use all of the read APIs to access all the relevant information that it needs while debugging. So in like Codex or in Claude, you just give it all the APIs and then just tell it to debug. So that's like the first thing, which is give the agent the relevant context. So let's go over a actual example. So in this case, let's say a customer has complained that the scan is taking too long. So the first thing that we need to do actually is we first need to determine if it's a front end or back end issue. So in this case, it's a back end issue because it's taking too long or a scan is taking too long. But in some instances, it might just be a front end issue. So in that case, the procedure to debug it will be a little bit different. But that's the first thing. First principle, which is just to first principle, which is to find out, which is just to zoom in on the actual problem. So that's the first thing, which is like first figure out what the actual problem is. So one of the biggest problems I had is just like jumping into the problem too fast. And a more effective way of debugging issues is just focus in on what is the problem, right? So what is the problem? So the customer is complaining that is taking too long. So first we need to verify, is this actually true, right? If it is true, then we need to zoom in and figure out like why it's taking too long. But in some cases, maybe the customer is having issues on their end. There might be problems where it only happened during a specific hour. So all those things are stuff that we need to consider. But the first question that we need to figure out is like what the actual problem is. So I have some notes here, and the first thing is to reproduce before going into the bug. So what that means is we need to figure out like why this customer had issues. Is it because there was a problem with the database? Is it because there was a problem with their account? Is it because there was a problem with the internet, right? So there's so many reasons of why they might have complained, and we first need to reproduce of why it is happening. So in this case, what I would have done is first I would just given the logs to Claude and just pasted in the customer's complaint to tell it why it may have happened. So that's the first thing, and just let it run in the background. After like while it's doing this, what I would be doing is I would be checking the database itself. So I would go into the admin panel and checking for this user. So did this user actually have slower scans, right? So that's the first thing you need to check, which is did they have the issue? And then the other thing is to see the level of impact. So did other users have this issue? If other users had the issue, then that might give a clue of if it was a database issue or if it was an issue with the code, right? So check all of the relevant information, and then also you probably need to check the code base. Like, was there a recent commit or any recent commits within the last week or month that might have caused this issue? So that's the main thing. And the second tip is to have a ton of logs, right? So this doesn't mean to spam the entire code base with logs, but it means that when we have new changes, when we're adding code, we want to make sure that we have enough logs so that we can figure out if there is a problem. So whenever we commit a code, the general principle is that we should have enough logs to not only confirm that the code is working, but also to confirm if there is any bug. So if there is a bug, you just think ahead of time and assume that there is a bug. Do we have enough logs to figure out what the bug is? So all the code changes have to have logs to make sure that we're able to debug stuff faster. And this will not only help us, but it will help the code agent because it's able to see all of the logs that it has and be able to figure out what the issue is or if there is an issue. So just make sure that there is enough logs and there is enough metrics. So if we push a change and the general principle is that we need to figure out what metrics we need to track to make sure that this code is not only working, but if it's not working, how can we detect if there is an issue? So that's the main thing that we need to track for, which is we have metrics to confirm it's working, and we can figure out quickly if it is impacting other production users and other production workflows. Let's see, this one's pretty useless. Check assumptions. So this is like the key thing, which is like we waste a lot of time, especially if we assume stuff ahead of time. So when someone says the scan is taking too long, like maybe in our mind, we might be thinking of a certain workflow, or we might be thinking of like we might even be assuming what is considered slow, right? So when debugging, we have to be very sure that we are not assuming any issues, like that we are not assuming any of our own biases. So what that means is that if the user complains, we need to have all the relevant information of what they even think. So what is considered slow? Like which flow is being impacted? If it is slow, what are all the relevant information that they have that can help us debug it? So we're not just assuming that their entire scans are slow. Maybe it's just one scan in particular, right? So we have to ask as much relevant. We have to first gather all of the relevant data before we start making code changes and like gathering information before we even start debugging, right? So this probably should be number one, which is just making sure that all the assumptions are covered. So there can't be any assumptions that we take, because in our mind, maybe we think this one thing, but in the user's mind, they think another thing. So this is like very, very key, which is we have to make sure that it is very, very clear of what the issue is and what is impacted. So like that should be gathered before we even start debugging. And then there are stuff like freezing external variables. So when debugging, you want to just like cross out all of the possible things that might have gone wrong. So what this means is that, let's say the person complained that these scans are too slow. There are several instances, like there are several root causes of what might have caused it. So let's say the database is slow, right? Or the code base had a commit that was recently pushed and it caused the scan to be slow. Or there was an issue with the disk. Maybe there was a disk overage and it caused the server to go down. Maybe it was an issue with our external API providers. Maybe it was an issue where there was a ton of scans, right? So maybe it's not an issue with any of these, but maybe it was an issue because there was a surge in scans and which caused all of the scans to go slower. So all of these things are possible candidates of why this issue happened. And basically what we're doing in the debugging phase is that we're going through and just checking, all right, the database was fine, so this is not an issue. The code base had no change in the last month, so this is not an issue, right? So we're going down line by line and make sure that all the variables that could have impacted it, we're just confirming if that did impact it. And by the end of this entire process, we'll zoom in on what the actual issue is. And then this is like, needless to say, we need to make sure that we're not guessing. So all of these we are confirming with actual logs, and we're confirming with real data that is either in the database or with other metrics. So we're not just guessing that, oh, this code change might not have caused it. Like we have to be very, very sure, and there are zero guessing in this entire process. All right, so this is a good advice. And then fix the system, not the symptoms. And then like this is the key thing. So with all customer complaints, like The ideal state is that the customer doesn't complain about anything, right? The code just works and there's no bugs. But there are bugs and this is software. So when there are bugs, we have to make sure that we deeply root cause the problem. So this doesn't mean just to have a band-aid over the issue. So what that means is, let's say a customer complained, and a quick band-aid might be to buy another server, or it might be to have really hacky code in the system to fix it. These are really bad long-term solutions, because what will happen is that we will have tons and tons of these little patches in the code base, which will cause more issues in the future. So what is the conclusion? The conclusion is that we have to make sure that we first root cause the problem. So what that means is we have to find out for sure what the actual problem is. And a good way to do that is you just ask why. So when the user says the scans are taking too long, then you just ask why. Maybe the scans have too much items, and then you ask why again. So you ask why 5 times. And this is like a famous Amazon thing, which is like 5 whys. And this is like really good for coming down to the root cause of the actual problem, because in most cases, someone will just stop at the first step, which is very surface layer root causing. So we want to get to the 5th why to figure out why there was actually a problem. And then after we truly find out the root cause, then we can create the solution so that this problem never happens again. So this is very key, which is find the actual root cause and then apply the solution. And then this is just the last thing, which is to add a test before fixing. So generally what we want to do is first root cause it. So this is very key, root cause the issue. Once we root cause it, we want to have a solution, right? So with the solution, it's sometimes, it might be risky to roll out the entire solution to all the users. So what we can do is we can just roll out the solution to the user that was impacted. So we roll out the solution and then we confirm that it's working. Then we roll out the solution to all of the users on the platform. So in this way, we have a tiered solution rollout, so that not like if we roll out a solution and there is a problem with that solution, it has the least amount of impact because we're only pushing the solution to a certain subset of the entire user base. So this is key, which is if the change is risky, we want to just limit it to a certain amount of users that had a problem, so that we can confirm that the solution worked before rolling out the solution to everyone on the platform. And then just one last thing is that the one really useful thing to root cause is we use impersonation. So we can see what the user is seeing, and this will help us confirm if it is a problem. So first, confirm it's a problem, and then 2, recreate the problem so that we can apply a solution and then confirm that the problem was solved after the solution was fixed. So this is key, because in most cases, it's like very annoying to just message the user to confirm if it was fixed or not fixed. So if we have a impersonation feature where we can see if the solution was fixed after we pushed it, then that is just a better user experience. So yeah, these are the quick tips, and hope you guys learned something.